To Jennifer, the one and only, whose unswerving faith was an inspiration, whose generosity is a byword, this book is dedicated as a mark of gratitude and affection. Geoffrey Farnell, February 10, 1910. Chapter 1, which, being the first, is very properly the shortest chapter in the book. When Sylvia Marchmont went to Europe, George Bellew, being, at the same time, desirous of testing his newest acquired yacht, followed her, and mutual friends in New York, Newport, and elsewhere, confidently awaited news of their engagement. Great, therefore, was their surprise when they learnt of her approaching marriage to the Duke of Ryde. Bellew, being young and rich, had many friends, very naturally, who, while they sympathized with his loss, yet agreed among themselves that, despite Bellew's millions, Sylvia had done vastly well for herself, seeing that a duke is always a duke, especially in America. There were also divers ladies in New York, Newport, and elsewhere, and celebrated for their palatial homes, their jewels, and waters, who were anxious to know how Bellew would comport himself under his disappointment. Some leaned to the idea that he would immediately blow his brains out. Others opined that he would promptly set off on another of his exploring expeditions, and get himself torn to pieces by lions and tigers, or devoured by alligators; while others, again, feared greatly that, in a fit of pique, he would marry some young person unknown, and therefore, of course, utterly unworthy. How far these worthy ladies were right, or wrong, in their surmises, they who take the trouble to turn the following pages shall find out. Chapter 2 of The Money Moon. This recording is in the public domain. The Money Moon, a Romance, by Geoffrey Farnell. Chapter 2. How George Bellew sought counsel of his valet. The first intimation Bellew received of the futility of his hopes was the following letter which he received one morning as he sat at breakfast in his chambers at St. James Street, W. My dear George, I am writing to tell you that I like you so much that I am quite sure I could never marry you. It would be too ridiculous. Liking, you see, George, is not love, is it? Though, personally, I think all that sort of thing went out of fashion with our great-grandmother Swoops and crinolines. So, George, I have decided to marry the Duke of Ryde. The ceremony will take place in 3 weeks' time at St. George's, Hanover Square, and everyone will be there, of course. If you care to come too, so much the better. I won't say that I hope you will forget me, because I don't. But I am sure you will find someone to console you, because you are such a dear fellow, and so ridiculously rich. So, good-bye, and best wishes. Ever yours most sincerely, Sylvia. Now, under such circumstances, had Bellew sought oblivion and consolation from bottles, or gone headlong to the devil in any of other numerous ways that are more or less inviting, deluded people would have pitied him, and shaken grave heads over him. For it seems that disappointment, more especially in love, may condone many offences, and cover as many sins as charity. But Bellew, knowing nothing of that latter-day hysteria which wears the disguise and calls itself temperament, and being only a rather ordinary young man, did nothing of the kind. Having lighted his pipe, and read the letter through again, he rang instead for Baxter, his valet. Baxter was small, and slight, and dapper, as to person, clean-shaven, alert of eye, and soft of movement. In a word, Baxter was the cream of gentlemen's gentlemen, and the very acme of what a valet should be, from the very precise parting of his glossy hair, to the trim toes of his glossy boots. Baxter, as has been said, was his valet, and had been his father's valet before him, and as to age, might have been 30, or 40, or 50, as he stood there beside the table, with one eyebrow raised a trifle higher than the other, waiting for Bellew to speak. "Baxter." "Sir?" "Take a seat." "Thank you, sir." And Baxter sat down, not too near his master, nor too far off, but exactly at the right and proper distance. "Baxter, I wish to consult with you."
"As between master and servant, sir." "As between man and man, Baxter." "Very good, Mr. George, sir." "I should like to hear your opinion, Baxter, as to what is the proper and most accredited course to adopt when one has been crossed in love." "Why, sir," said Baxter, slightly wrinkling his smooth brow, "so far as I can call to mind, the courses usually adopted by despairing lovers are, in number, four." "Name them, Baxter." "First, Mr. George, there is what I may term the course retaliatory, which is marriage." "Marriage?" "With another party, sir, on the principle that there are as good fish in the sea as ever came out, and pebbles on beaches, sir. You understand me, sir?" "Perfectly. Go on." "Secondly, there is the army, sir. I have known of a good many enlistments on account of blighted affections, Mr. George, sir. Indeed, the army is very popular." "Ah?" said Bellow, settling the tobacco in his pipe with the aid of the salt spoon. "Proceed, Baxter." "Thirdly, Mr. George, there are those who are content to merely disappear." said Bellow. "And lastly, sir, though it is usually the first, there is dissipation, Mr. George. Drink, sir, the consolation of bottles, and—" "Exactly," nodded Bellow. "Now, Baxter," he pursued, beginning to draw diagrams on the tablecloth with the salt spoon, "knowing me as you do, what course would you advise me to adopt?" "You mean, Mr. George, speaking as between man and man, of course, you mean that you are in the unfortunate position of being crossed in your affections, sir?" "Also broken hearted, Baxter." "Certainly, sir. Miss Marchmont marries the Duke of Ryde in 3 weeks, Baxter." "Indeed, sir!" "You were, I believe, aware of the fact that Miss Marchmont and I were as good as engaged?" "I had gathered as much, sir." "Then, confound it all, Baxter, why aren't you surprised?" "I am quite overcome, sir," said Baxter, stooping to recover the salt spoon which had slipped to the floor. "Consequently," pursued Bellew, "I am broken hearted, as I told you." "Certainly, sir." "Crushed, despondent, and utterly hopeless, Baxter, and shall be henceforth pursued by the haunting spectre of the might have been." "Very natural, sir, indeed." "I could have hoped, Baxter, that having served me so long, not to mention my father, you would have shown just a shade more feeling in the matter." "And if you were to ask me, as between man and man, sir, why I don't show more feeling, then, speaking as the old servant of your respected father, Master George, sir, I should beg most respectfully to say that regarding the lady in question, her conduct is not in the least surprising, Miss Marchmont being a beauty and aware of the fact, Master George. Referring to your heart, sir, I am ready to swear that it is not even cracked. Now, sir, what clothes do you propose to wear this morning? And pray, why should you be so confident of regarding the condition of my heart?" "Because, sir, speaking as your father's old servant, Master George, I make bold to say that I don't believe that you have ever been in love, or even known what love is, Master George, sir." Bellew picked up the salt spoon, balanced it very carefully upon his finger, and put it down again. "Nevertheless," said he, shaking his head, "I can see for myself but the dreary perspective of a hopeless future, Baxter, blasted by the haunting spectre of the might have been. I'll trouble you to push the cigarettes a little nearer. And now, sir," said Baxter as he rose to strike, and apply the necessary match, "what suit will you wear to day?" "Something in tweeds." Tweeds, sir? Surely you forget your appointment with the Lady Cecily Prynne and her party? Lord Montclair had me on the telephone last night. Also a good heavy walking stick, Baxter, and a knapsack." "A knapsack, sir?" "I shall set out on a walking tour in an hour's time." "Certainly, sir. Where to, sir?" "I haven't the least idea, Baxter, but I'm going in an hour. On the whole, of the 4 courses you describe for one whose life is blighted, whose heart, I say whose heart, Baxter, is broken, utterly smashed, and shivered beyond repair, I prefer to disappear. In an hour, Baxter." "Shall you drive the touring car, sir, or the new racer?" "I shall walk, Baxter, alone, in an hour."